Association of Madison and neighboring areas, or PAMANA, had a gathering with the theme Our Filipino Immigration Stories in celebration of the Filipino American History Month. It was moderated by author of The Brave Crossing, A Journey in Between, whose father was a Filipino, Maria Alvarez Stroud, participated with inspiring speakers who shared their story on how they ended up in the United States of America, the challenges they faced adjusting to a new environment, and what they have learned from that journey. Speakers were nurse Dolly Pagas, the president and founder of Global Inspiration, yours truly, Janette Jordee, and Dr. Ken Ligaray, medical doctor specializing in endocrinology, diabetes, and metabolism. The event was interactive, and the audience chimed in with their immigration story. A big thank you to Didi Boado O'Connor from Atlanta, Georgia, Annalie Mendoza from Evansville, Marechiel Santos-Lang from Belleville, Lynnette Scott from Madison, and Alan Gonzales from Verona, all from Wisconsin. Also, a big thank you to author Margie Bruce from the Milwaukee area, who shared about another nonprofit organization and nonprofit group, the Filipino American National Historical Society, as well as her immigration story. The event was successful. I consider it successful since it was featured in the Capital City Hues magazine. Kudos to PAMANA and its leadership team, especially to June Gonzales, the current president, and to all Filipinos. Mabuhay ang Filipinos.
I'm from Madison, and I've been in Madison, I think about 40 years. And it's been a wonderful place. I talk about it as my place that I found that I belong in a lot of ways, which is something that I think we all relate to, especially with our history of the Philippines. I have to say, I know some of you already said this to me today, is that you don't look Filipino. And I know that. My mother actually was Norwegian, and my father mestizo. So he was Filipino and Spanish. And believe me, I looked a lot more Spanish and Filipino when I was young. I had the very dark hair that we all know of. And, but I was never mistaken for a Filipino because there were no other Filipinos, although I just met someone that I think that was in the hometown of my parents. And so maybe there was another Filipino there that my father actually was able to know. I was mistaken for being Native American, Latino, you name it, Black, because there was no other minority in our community. So I think I'm really committed to having this discovery of my roots, and it took me a long, long time. And it really took me writing the book of my father's journey. So that's where I thought we'd start today as sort of a warm-up, a review of, gee, this is not our generation. This is a generation, 2 generations before. I didn't have enough copies of this, but I want to just refer to it because this, did most of you get copies of this? I shamelessly did not bring enough copies, but it really talks about the 4 stages, the ebb and flow of when the Filipinos came. And I'll be starting talking not about the first, because that started in 1587 to 1906, but my father's was in the second wave. And I'm imagining that we're going to hear a lot about the next waves as we all share our stories later. So let me start by just going through the story. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. Again, this is a warm-up more than anything. So my father's story, it is called Brave Crossing. I think for all of our ancestors, I think it's an apt name. And I also love that it took me forever to name this book, by the way. But A Journey in Between, and I have to say, I moved away, hence apologize. I have to say that I felt that growing up and I didn't understand it. I knew I looked different. I knew I was different. I knew my father sounded different than everyone. He had a heavy accent. And so I think that, again, it's something I'm hoping that we hear a little bit about as people talk today. So meet my father, Ricardo Alvarez. You can see he looks very Spanish. He was born in 1895. He was 58, just about 58 when I was born. So, and my mother 44. People of siblings ahead of me. I was the eighth child. And he came from the city of Luzon, Luzon. He had a very good life. I have to say this isn't the typical necessarily story, because he came from a very well-to-do family, and he was very happy. He actually lived right off of this court, right near the church. His Lola was a block away. He was very, very close to his Lola, who really guided him in his future decision-making in a lot of ways. But his life changed, and I'm not going to go through this in any great detail. I'm just going to remind you that what happened when he was 3 years old was a war that really helped, I think, define some of those decisions that he made. And of course, that was followed by the war against America. And again, I'm assuming you know those things. For my family, it was very devastating. That first war, when the Americans fought against Spain, I do believe that they really did help the Philippines gain what they thought was going to be their independence. And of course, then right on the heels of that was when the United States decided that, in some, I would say in the government's mind, that the Philippines wasn't ready to rule themselves. And so they became a colony. And that was when English was starting to be taught. No longer was it, you were no longer in favor when you were looking very Spanish, as my father did, and my grandfather. My grandfather towered over most Filipinos, but he was very well respected. He was the pharmacist in the town of Santa Cruz. So when he came to Chicago, let's remember the picture you just saw, he experienced something very, very different. He couldn't walk down the street and see anyone that looked like him or sounded like him. In fact, the numbers in 1910 of Filipinos in Chicago was something like 200 or so. In 1920, it was 320. So it was not something, he couldn't find, he didn't have a sense of community in a lot of ways. And it was for the first time he wasn't able to go in certain establishments. Dance, you know, we all love to dance. I had never understood why I loved to dance so much until I really understood when I went to the Philippines with my father. And he could only go to a special dance hall. You all have these little dance tickets, which we're going to be using to give away books today. But in those dance halls, the only women that were there were taxi dancers, and you had to pay. He paid 10 cents a dance. I imagine he went through a lot of money because he really did love to dance. So I think it was the first time you really felt what we call today actual discrimination, and we went through some pretty tough times. And that's, again, because of historical events that were taking place. Again, I'm not going to go into detail, but World War I came in 1916. The United States signed on to the war. World War I in 1917. Droves of young men signed up, and women, to serve in that war. Many Filipinos, in fact. And as a consequence, there was a huge migration of African Americans to Chicago, where he was living. Again, then the pandemic hit, and again, I know this is something that influenced him in his desire to become a doctor. It was something, he was in medical school when this pandemic hit, and although he had some hardships, again, because he didn't know English when he arrived, I think he flunked English twice at the University of Chicago. That's the only thing he ever told me. Everything else I had to do research about. But this was something that was, just as it has been for us, very traumatic. And young men were dying by droves. And they died very, very quickly in that pandemic. And of course, then there was different battles going Something I didn't know at all was the Chicago race riots. And they were very real. My father lived, in fact, blocks away from what was called the Black Belt. And at that time, again, if you looked different, it wasn't just Black people who were being attacked or having their homes destroyed. It was also Latinos, Mexicans, anyone who had a darker skin color. And then there was a resurgence of the Ku Klux Klan. Again, I knew nothing about this until I did that research, and there were 30,000 strong in the 1920s in Chicago. My father went to Marquette Medical School, and he was, I can't even believe it when I say this, there was no other Filipino marked down as being there in Milwaukee. And he was the only minority in his class graduating. But the Ku Klux Klan there was 20,000 strong. And then, of course, he was able somehow to get through all of that and become a graduate in 1925 from Marquette Medical School, which is a testament. I think the word great, again, our ancestors, very, very brave. In my case, it just happens to be my father. Our first is Dolly Pagas, and she's our first speaker who arrived in Madison 17 years ago, graduating from Xavier University with a College of Nursing. She is one of the 40 nurses that were directly hired from the Philippines by the University of Wisconsin Hospital and Clinics. As an intermediate care nurse, she previously worked within the pulmonary and GI disciplines and currently works in the hemodialysis unit. Dolly is a mother of 3, and as she puts it, not me, she's the better half of Mr. Bobby Pagas. Welcome, Dolly, if you want to just come forward. Our second guest is Janette Jordee, and I have a feeling I don't really need to introduce Janette, but here we go. She is a first-generation immigrant who has been in the United States for 21 years and is currently a subrogation, sorry, that's a hard thing to say, director for an insurance company. She is the past president of PAMANA, which is why many of you probably know her, and she's also a very active member of nonprofit organizations in the community. Janette is also the founder and president of 1nspiration, an organization I got to know because I was interviewed by her, and which is a human service nonprofit organization. So welcome, Janette. I'm sure she's willing to tell you more about her organization. And our third guest is Dr. Ken Lingasay, and I'm going to call you Dr. Ken if that's okay. Okay. Who was born in the province of, I don't know how to say this necessarily, Cotabato? Okay, thank you, in the Philippines. He is a graduate of the University of the Philippines College of Medicine and currently a clinical associate professor in the Division of Endocrinology at the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine and Public Health. Dr. Ken is married to his high school classmate, Vita, and they have 3 children. If you can come forward, please. So I've asked each of these 3 lovely folks to answer 3 questions, and I'm going to answer each person 1 question, and then we'll go on to the next question. So we're going to start with you. And the first question is, what were the circumstances that brought you to Wisconsin? And if you wouldn't mind coming up.
Because I have a job offer from the University of Wisconsin. And the U.S. government also gave us this family immigrant visa. So I get to work as a nurse in UW Hospital. And that's the reason why me and my family came here in the United States.
Unlike Dolly, I never imagined to be in America, but I'm here 21 years today. Why? Because when I was in college, I was recruited by LFS, or the League of Filipino Students. So I am one of those few students, was holding a banner and screaming, "Get lost, Americans. Philippines could survive without Americans. Go back to your country." But here I am now. That's why it's hard to believe. But I met my husband because I quit from Supreme Court to be in the investment industry. I met my husband and it ignited a spark. So we started dating. We married in America. He has 2 kids and we have also a kid. So I was an instant mother with 3 kids, 7, 6, 5. So just imagine me having 3 kids right away. An offer was made to me, a better paying job in Wisconsin. I was actually first in Iowa. I moved to Wisconsin. I left my teaching job, doing with 4th year college. I left my teaching job and I also left my office job. So here I am in Wisconsin.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm not a congressman or a senator. Janette made me wear this, so I think it looks good anyway. Thank you, PAMANA and Maria, for holding this first event during pandemic. Coming to Wisconsin for us involves a lot of stages, so my answer might be much longer than what they told you, if that's okay. So I came first to the US in 2001. So I have 2 sisters in New York who are already citizens at that time. My mom just came here as an immigrant, but I did not go through that route. So it's sariling sikap kind of for me to come here. So in 2001, I was just finishing med school and we have this very nice College of Medicine choir. So in 2001, the whole choir came here to perform. So I came here to sing, not to become a doctor, right? So we started in LA, then Missouri, and then in the states of Maryland, New Jersey, and New York. And we were hosted by the different chapters of the alumni from the University of the Philippines College of Medicine. And they kept saying, why don't you come here for training? It's really nice. Then maybe you learn so much more than what you learned back home. So we tried. So when I came home, I decided I'll try and apply for residency training here after medical school. So to come here for residency, we have to do 2 written tests and 1 practical exam. So those 2 tests are kind of expensive too. You can take them back home, but the 3rd test, which is a practical test, is only held at that time in Philadelphia. So you have to come here to be able to complete all the tests and then apply for residency, which I did. So the first visa coming here was the tourist one. You're all familiar with B1, B2 kind of visa, right? And then luckily I got accepted into a program in the Chicago area. So that's where I started. The visa that was available for me at that time was a J1 visa. I don't know if you're all familiar with those names of visa. J1 is an exchange visitor visa. You're allowed to come here, develop your skills, and improve on your knowledge with the agreement that after your training, you go home to your own country for at least 2 years before you can come back here on a different capacity. The problem with J1 is that it expires every year because the program has to renew your contract every year. You have to apply for the J1 visa every year. Another problem that comes with that is that there's not always a stamp on your passport, right? If you go home, you have to get an appointment with the embassy to be able to have a stamp on your passport again to be able to come back. So if I go home, I have to make sure I have to make an appointment. What if there's an emergency? So what I did for at least twice was to get out because the visa is only available outside of the US. So I have to get out to Canada, make an appointment with the embassy there just to make sure I get a stamp in my passport, then come back. Just in case there's an emergency, I could go home and there's not much of a hassle. I also had to do that so that we could get married back in the Philippines and I don't get stuck there and come back here. So eventually, I was on J1 for 5 years. Eventually, we got married and she was able to come on a J2 visa. So the problem with the J2 visa, you cannot easily get a job because that's not easily allowed to get a job. So my wife came without not being able to get social security number, which is a problem for many reasons. So 5 years of training was done, 3 years in Chicago, 2 years in Missouri for my fellowship in endocrinology. Now I have to decide, right? Do I have to go home or stay? Well, my family, a few of them already here in the US, so I decided maybe I'll try to stay. So to be able to stay and waive that requirement of going home, you have to look for a job in an underserved area, either an area where there's a very limited doctors available, or even in an urban area where the ratio of patients to doctor is very huge. That's an underserved area. So I ended up working in Montgomery, Alabama. That's my first job. That's my waiver job. So I don't get that requirement to go back home anymore. So once you get the waiver job, your visa transitions from a J1 to an H1. So now maybe you're also familiar, H1 is a working visa. With an H1 visa, your family gets an H4, also not allowed to work. So my wife had to stay home, but we started having kids, so that turned out okay too. When you look for a waiver visa, a waiver job, you have to look for an underserved area, but that employer hopefully is also willing to sponsor your green card, because that's eventually your paper to be able to stay in the States, right? So I signed for that job as a faculty member at the University of Alabama in Montgomery, and they said, okay, we'll sponsor your green card. And I'm so happy to do that. So halfway down the road, or maybe 1 year left in my 3-year contract in the waiver job, I did not hear any update on my green card. So I called the international office at the University of Alabama and said, hey, what's the status of my green card? Because I'm almost done with my H visa. And they said, didn't your program tell you they pulled out your application? Because at that time, recession came and then budget of the clinic was not so good. So like, what am I gonna do now, right? I just bought a house, we just started a family, what are we gonna do? So I had to look for another job that would offer me continue my H1 visa, and at the same time was willing to sponsor our green card. So after 3 years in Alabama, we moved to a town called Easton in Maryland, and that's where the other 2 of our kids were born, and they eventually were able to sponsor our green card. So maybe 2-3 years in Maryland, we eventually got our green card. Vita was able to get her Social Security and was able to start working. She was not stuck at home anymore. And now we get to decide, now we have green card, where are we gonna settle, where our kids would have a better life, probably better future, and we could get better opportunities. And that led us to Madison.
The most difficult thing about being new to all these areas that you described, but specifically in Madison.
For Madison, so when we came to Madison, we only knew 2 people. One is my friend from med school who practices in Janesville. And the other one is Vita's friend, somebody who knows Vita from college. She was a year younger than her in college, but they never met there. But somehow we knew that she was here. That's Brenda. So those were the only 2 people we met. So the challenges were, where are we going to settle? Where should we send our kids to school? What resources are available for us? Working in a whole new system was challenging, a whole new computer system in the hospital. Every time there's a new one, it's challenging. And building roots and social network, I think, was the challenge for us coming here to Madison.
I don't call it difficulty because difficulty is so negative for me. I call it challenges because challenges is a stimulus. It arouses you and wants you to solve whatever the difficulties are. So when I came to United States of America, our first stop is in Iowa. We stayed there for 6 years. We are in a small town with a population of 496. And I am a bubbly person. And I don't like to talk to people because I was not confident of how my English was. So they invited me to a party and I was just sitting there. So the first party is the Christmas party. I came to America the first time December 10th. So I was invited to a party. So I was expecting that really, it's America. You know, all these fancy sounds and dancing, a lot of food. But when I get there, they serve only cheese, chips, and oh my gosh, and there's no karaoke, there's no dancing. For me, it's so hard. But I had my mother with me when I came to America in July. So my first stop in America is in December of 2000. Then I came back in July 2001 with my mom. So I would say the challenge I had was homesick. I want to go home. I hate America. You know, like I was screaming when I was in college, I hate America. But I did not know that America will bring the best in me. Because when I was in the Philippines, I never would expect that the company would pay for my move from Iowa to Wisconsin. They hired 2 or 3 trucks to move my stuff. I stayed in a hotel for 1 month with my family. So for me, it is homecoming. Homecoming in a way that I miss the warmth of the Filipino camaraderie. We're so noisy, we're so loud. People are calling us weird, crazy, but they miss us because we are crazy and weird in a good way. Second, weather. Oh my gosh. It is so cold in Iowa. We have a new guest. We have a guest from Evansville who just came here like July. It's so cold in Wisconsin and in Iowa. So when I came to America, I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I've seen on TV. This is what I've read in books. I love snow. Oh, I did not have any idea that it would actually froze. Like your eyes are so dry, your skin are so dry, you are trembling, and then when you say you're cold, they don't know that you almost pass out. So homecoming and the homesick, the weather, because in the Philippines, we are in average or 70 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit every day. And in America, we are almost below 0 sometimes in winter. So homecoming, weather, and of course, the food. Even though I have my mom here, we're just talking in our own language, we're still cooking the, laoy. It's a soup with no oil. You just have all the vegetables mixed together. We have fish. Oh, how I love fish. My husband do not like seafood. So when I have my current husband, so it's the homecoming, the weather, and the food. So I will just only give 3 for now.
So when we arrived here, me and my family, it's in the midst of winter. So it's about, that was like February 2004. So we arrived here with our 2 eldest kids, age of 3 and 2. So you can imagine that, to get around the city, it's really difficult for us and, a little bit challenging to drag them and to commute with them in the bus. And then going to work, and because I work PM shift, so going to work and going back home, although we will live in an apartment which is just like blocks away from the hospital, but then you have to walk. You have to walk regardless it's winter or if it's raining out, because we don't have any car back then. So transportation is the main issue. And then also communication. We don't have any cell phone back then, and we can't call or communicate with our parents back home. So we have limited money. We only have to have the basic needs when we arrived here. We don't have any phone and we don't have any computer back then. So we have to wait until I got my second or third paycheck so that we will be able to invest a computer or, like what you call this, have the landline phone. So those are the challenging in our part.
The third question, and that is, what discoveries have you made along your journey? And so why don't you just start?
Well, I discovered a lot of things, but the main thing is that I discovered that I can be creative. Like, you know how to do DIY projects and, like to do painting works and like do like handyman work at home because it's the labor cost, it's so expensive. So you have to do it your own. Like you do carpentry job, painting and whatnot. So those are the thing that I didn't imagine that I could do it myself. When we came here in the United States, I have to like be that creative and like so that we will save money instead of like hiring somebody to do this and that. So those are the things that I discovered about myself.
I would say self-discovery. As I mentioned before, I am so embarrassed to talk in public. Now, no one can stop me to talk in public. If I have to say something, I open myself. And you're new in America. If you have something that you want to talk or let everybody stand up. I was in Walmart and then just wait for 5 minutes. It's already 15 minutes. So who's your manager? You have to stand up with what you think is right. So going back to the question is, what is the journey that you have discovered, correct? Or what are the discoveries? I would say self-discovery. I am braver than I behave. I am stronger than I appear. Because when I don't have any family here. I don't have any close friends. So when I filed a divorce against my first husband, no one knows. Even my mother, I keep it to myself because in the Philippines, divorce is so negative, But in America, you're so powerful if you do that. So I did that. I filed a divorce and I don't care what other people say. I don't care what my family say. I was not happy. And now that I am talking about domestic abuse, I give myself a tap on the shoulder. I consider myself brave. And I consider myself also smart, smarter than I think. But smart is not being a doctor, a nurse, an engineer, or an author. No. For me, being smart is go beyond what is your limitation, what are your weaknesses, accept those. I hate to talk in public, so I be a member of Toastmasters. You have to know and you have to accept that. No one can put you down regardless of your color. And a lot of love. As a Filipino or as a human being, we want everybody to love us. We want to please everyone. That's chaotic. It's not possible. I am getting older. I've been here 21 years. Now that I'm getting older, if you have 2 or 3 close friends that you can open yourself without being judged, you are okay. You don't have to please a lot of people. You don't have to please 99% of your friends because that's not possible. So, and also, I want to add this. When you accept your limitations or your weaknesses, you consider yourself strong. You make your own decision, not the decision of your family, not the decision of your friends or your coworkers. You are in control of yourself. You're in control of your life, and life is what you make it.
No microphone, sorry. So discoveries along the way. So in my first few weeks of residency, I find myself gazing out of the window at the hospital and asking myself, why am I doing this? Why am I here? Nobody told me to do this and nobody forced me to do this. But later on, I realized that the people I work with make life better. And I get to explore other cultures because in the residence program, there's a lot of people from India, other Asian countries, and people who are from the US. And I get to appreciate the diversity. You get to try different kinds of food, and now I love their food, and many other ways of looking at things. Also, appreciating people who come from different walks of life or even have different orientations. So that's one. Number two, at the end of the day, my wife and I, there are things that it's ours, our battles, our successes, that you cannot always depend on other people. I think that's part of growing up and growing older. Number three, no matter how long we've stayed here, and no matter what people back home think, how much success we've had, we're not too different from the people that we left behind. We also have some problems in life, and I think it's really good to stay connected to people back home. So those are my three things.
How about it, just a big hand for all three of them? Thank you so much. What we'd like to do, and I would love to have a conversation about all of your your journeys. What we'd like to do is open it up, and hoping that you're going to come and want to share some of your points of your journey. Like, what was it like when you first came, and what was difficult, and maybe what was the best? I mean, as you're hearing the discoveries that were made, and that the evolution of coming to the United States and becoming a part of this country with all of its problems, and really just what is special about I believe someone said this to me. I don't really have a story. Everyone has a story. I mean, you really do. And sharing it is not only good for you, but good for everyone to hear, because it's that diversity. I always say diversity lined with a common spirit. We all need each other, and we need each other's stories. So we're hoping that if you're not going to stand up and start talking right away, we'll do this an activity to try to warm you up. But I have a feeling you'll be able to talk. And I know you'll start, won't you? Okay. Introduce yourself. But it's wonderful that we were able to have someone come all the way from Milwaukee.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for to PAMANA, its board and its officers, and Maria for putting this very nice event together, and actually in celebration of Filipino American History Month this month. My name is Margie Bruce, and like she said, I'm from the Milwaukee area. I actually live in Waukesha County, but I lived in Milwaukee County for a number of years. And I'm actually here on behalf of the Filipino American National Historical Society. I don't know if any of you have heard of the organization, but it was founded in 1982 by Dorothy Boyga Cordova. And then in 1985, it was incorporated as a nonprofit organization in Seattle with her husband, late Dr. Fred Cordova, who just passed away, I think this year or last year. He became the founding president and the archivist. The funds, as we call it, is governed by 27 Board of Trustees members, and one trustee is actually from Milwaukee, and her name is Princess Imraida Kiram, who also was the founding or the founder of the Midwest chapter and its past president. Today, there are 42 chapters all over the country, and one being in the Wisconsin chapter and the Midwest chapter. In 2016, FANS was able to erect a museum in Stockton, California, where it's a treasure trove of Filipino American history, immigration, memorabilia, artifacts, and all that stuff that's being contributed by the chapters all over the country. The Wisconsin chapter, the president right now is Isabel Maria Piana, who sends her regrets that she couldn't be here. That's why I'm here for her behalf, on her behalf. The mission of FANS, I just want to quote it to make sure I don't miss a word, is to promote understanding, education, enlightenment, appreciation, and enrichment through the identification, gathering, presentation, and dissemination of the history and culture of the Filipino Americans in the US. So I distributed this to you earlier. One is the introduction from the president of the Wisconsin chapter. And in the back is a form that you can fill out, your name, the first member of your family who arrived here in the Philippines came, and what your, kind of like what Maria has in there, what year your ancestor or the first person that came to the US, what year they came here, where they're from. That's basically what this form is. And that's kind of our job at FANS, is to document every Filipino here in Wisconsin and across America, to document their stories, send it to the archives in Seattle. For whatever purpose, there could be a third generation right now looking for their stories, like Maria was looking for her story, right? So there could be, the future generations could be helped by all this for the personal or academic purposes. So I encourage you to fill it out and send it in. It could be written, it could be audio, it could be video. And there's an email there, and I think I gave you my card if you have any questions where you can send it. And my story. And my story is, since I was young, I was always, I loved letter writing. I started when I was 12. In 5th grade, my best friend and I got separated. She moved to a different island, so we started writing to each other. And then after graduating from 6th grade, some of my friends moved to different parts of the country, so I started writing. So I had pen pals since I was 12. And then in high school, I have pen pals from different countries, Asian countries, and actually there was one in Europe, but I can't remember what country she was from now. But it was never the opposite sex. It was friends with girls. And I never realized that that's the way I would find my husband, or when my husband would find me. So in college, I had this, I was in a magazine for Contact, and my information was there. And then people started writing to me, and that's kind of how I met my husband. So we wrote for a year, and then he came visit me in the Philippines. For 3 weeks he was there, we got engaged. 6 months later, we got married, and then 3 months later, I came here. And that was back in 1993, and I transferred, because I finished 2 years of college in the Philippines in Cebu City, and I transferred to Marquette University and got all my credits transferred, and they gave me a scholarship and was able to continue my studies, where I graduated with an accounting degree. So worked for 5 years as a financial analyst, and then stayed home for 11 years to raise my children, and now I'm back as an accountant, back to the workforce. So it's kind of like my story.
I came from Atlanta, Georgia, to visit Madison for 5 days. We are celebrating FAM2 in Atlanta for 4 Saturdays, and I'm missing a big celebration in Atlanta sponsored by the Philippine-American Chamber of Commerce there, and it's called Sari Sari Market. Instead of just the Sari Sari store, they made it into a big thing for the entire Atlanta. But anyway, I'm a resident of Atlanta now, but I have a story because I came from Madison, Wisconsin. I'm 80 years old, and I came to Atlanta in 1969. And a couple here are my friends from way back too. And I came not as a nurse or a doctor. I was just a souvenir wife of a former Peace Corps volunteer who was stationed in Zamboanga And when I graduated from UP, I went back home to Zamboanga to teach. And lo and behold, I met my future husband. I contemplated working in Manila, but something urged me to go back home. And so I met my husband. He taught chemistry and I taught physics. And I came here like an ordinary housewife. He went to UW for his PhD in water chemistry, and I was just a housewife. We stayed in Eagle Heights, and for the first 6 months, I tried substitute teaching in Madison. Is it Madison High School or the one by West Town? Oh, Memorial, yeah, okay. And then my husband had to wake up very early to take me there because we only had one car and I didn't drive. Then I tried, and I had, when we came here, I had a 1-month-old baby. And then I tried working in the dorms because I saw in the bus stop a sign, wanted student wives to put Cokes in the vending machine. So there I was working for a few months, and I had some other friends in Eagle Heights, Filipinos too, who babysat for me. Sometimes I would feel depressed because here I am, a college graduate, and what am I doing? You know, I'm just putting Cokes in the vending machines. But that didn't last long. After that, I found where the personnel department was, and I was able to get in. Until we left, I worked at the Cancer Research, McArdle Institute for Cancer Research, until from 1969 to 1983. So those were experiences I had as a brand new wife and I had a green card, no problem. I got it in 2 weeks after I got here. So that was then, 1969. And then the other experiences I had was while working at McArdle. Sometimes I would rush up to the top floor to look at where the smokes were coming from because there were demonstrations. Because of, was that Vietnam War? Yeah. And then the other experience that we had, because there were so many graduate students from UP living at Eagle Heights, and most of them were married, but there were single ones too. There were teach-ins about the Vietnam War, and so that was how we got together at that time. Of course, apart from the parties we had, meeting up, after hours and all that. So, and most of my class friends at that time went home after they finished their PhD here. And meanwhile, we went on, and 2 of my 3 children were born here. By the way, I consider Madison my hometown. Whoever asked me, where do you go? Madison, Wisconsin. My family came here, my mother and father, they lived a wonderful life here when I left, and they are buried here in the cemetery. What's the cemetery? I forgot. Resurrection. And then, of course, some of you know my sister, who I come here to visit, Lynnette, my baby sister. So those are the little things that you didn't experience because you were not here yet. From 1969, it was wonderful for us, Oh, one experience. There was only one Oriental store. So a group of us, 3 of us, and we learned to drive already, would drive to Chicago, buy our rice, buy our fish and all that stuff, and load up coming back until next time, But that was the first few years when there was nothing, you don't have Kroger, no calls, nothing, and Even AMP, they didn't have anything until a few years later. So that was my life at the start before you came. So I'm active in Atlanta, and I would like to invite you next year, celebrating 125th independence anniversary. Every year, Atlanta has a big celebration ever since we celebrated the day on the day itself, not on Saturdays when we used to do it. And I'm in charge of that celebration for next year. And it's going to be at the aquarium, a very nice venue. You're welcome to Atlanta. Um, sorry.
Um, sorry, my English is not good. Mm, I really come here because I need help. I am the victim of like a domestic what's called it. Mhm. All I can say is when I come here, alive in July 4th, 2022. I can say my life in America is miserable, but I am so ready to tell the truth. When I met my husband, I thought that he's a good person because he's good in online. But that day when I arrived here, instead he want me to rest. But he said, "Oh, you need to work and all your painting in the house and all the cleaning because that's the rule in America. We need to the wife follow to the husband, especially he's a disabled." So he said, "No matter what I say, you need to follow me, obey me, or else the jail is open." I don't know if that's true, but my friends say it's not true. So I did follow him, even though I don't like it. Then every time I go to the kitchen, it's like he treat me like a prostitute. How can I say maybe because my boss like couple of kids here, he tried to touch something up on my like that. Like that. Oh, it's like it's a what's to say that she said he can touch anyone who wanted to, which is I don't like it. But again, as he said, it's the rule in the America that's the wife needs to follow to the husband what he said. Then he said, "You need to do what I wanted you to do because I sent money to Philippines, but which is I am working in the Philippines, but he said that you need to stop at work because I will support you." I said, "Are you sure that you want to support me because I'm working and I help my family because Filipino, we help our family as we can, right?" Yes. So he said, okay. Then he started support me $100 a month for 1 year. Then by second year, he's starting at $200 for support that together with my family, which I use it for some other people's documents too, to process like that. And then at the third time, he said that. So all of that, he noted on a big notebook, and I need to pay. Yeah, that's that time when I will arrive here by July 5th. I will pay everything I need to pay. Even I never rest, I never sleep. I'm so tired of that. Then he said, "Scott, not everybody that I killed people in the Philippines. I use drugs. I am scammers people here. How I scam? I don't do people. I'm just arrived here." So I said I need help. So I met one of my friends in Africa. I can't imagine. I sleep in the park for 2 hours. It's too cold for me, which I don't know anyone here.
I am a domestic abuse offender. I need all your information.
Yes, and you know what? You're in a room full of family. You just have to understand that. So,
Yeah, I'm so
you
sorry.
can't. No, don't be. You came to the right place, and you're great. Anyone else want to share their story? No, that was hard to hear. Great, come forward.
All right, my name is Marechiel. Welcome to those new in town. Nice to see old friends. I was just relating to Dolly's story about how hard it is to start here in Madison, and Ken looking at the window, like wondering, what are we doing here? I came here in the US with an H1 visa. It's very similar to what Dr. Ken has experienced. But at that time, I had 4 young children, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And Dolly and Bob probably can relate when you have young kids like that. And I think the one thing good about the Filipinos, we look so young. You know, you don't think someone is 30 when they look like 12, which is what happened when I just came here. I was already 32, but they thought I was 16. And on a working visa, at that time I was working in the Philippines for a USAID funded project. And my boss, who was American, thought that I did good work. And so when there was a job opening here in the US, she said, Marechiel, why don't you apply for a job here in Madison, Wisconsin? And I thought Wisconsin was like New York. And I came here, like, where are the buildings? There's no tall buildings. And then we arrived in August and had 4 kids. And when you come to the US, you make tough choices. For those of us who grew up in the Philippines, we're so used to getting help. We have like 1 nanny for 1 child. You know, have 4 kids, had 3 nannies and 1 gardener. Like, it's a very luxurious life, but it's not really luxury. It's just people that are poorer wants their kids to go to school and you help them out. So when I came here, there's no help. So you just basically have to do it all by yourself. And at that time, I was a single mother. And I had leaned on a community. I didn't have a community, but I remember very clearly, part of my job was planning large conferences and traveling around the world. And so I would be gone 150 days of the 365 days in a year for work. And I remember the very first time I was gone, I would have color charts, just so I would schedule who would be watching over the kids while I was gone and traveling. And Ate Hermie was my very, very first person who took care of our 4 kids. So I am forever grateful to you, Ate Hermie. Thank you. Those were tough times. But as Dr. Ken was saying, H1 has a limit. As a meeting planner, they can only hire me for 3 years at a time. So 6 years was the maximum. And the renewal period, you have to go to Canada to get stamped to come back to the US so that you can work again. And then my 6 years was up. So like, okay, what am I gonna do? I have to go back to the Philippines. But thankfully at that time, I met my now husband, Chris, in church. There was a dance event and people like to dance, the Filipinos like to dance, right? Because of the dancing, I met my husband, Chris, and as a result of that, there's an opportunity for us to be together. It is really a story of being brave coming here to the US. But I think we have demonstrated that we can be a community and sharing with each other, and what a privileged life we live here in the States. So I'm forever grateful.
Thank you, Maria. I think most of you know me, but I'm gonna tell some stories that maybe not known or you may hear for the first time. I'm Alan. I'm actually better known as June's wife. My immigration story started in 1982 when I came here as a graduate student from the University of the Philippines after spending 2 years teaching at the university. I got a teaching assistantship because obviously it was very expensive to study here. I think tuition was waived plus a teaching stipend of $500, which was very big at the time. I went to the University of Kansas where I met June. He was also a graduate student there. And it was interesting because I came with a friend, actually a co-teacher from the University of the Philippines, and we were going around the university asking around whether there were any Filipino students in there. We went to the Office of Foreign Students or some kind of office that supposedly knew that if there were any Filipino foreign students, they would tell us. But we were told there weren't any except the 2 of us. So we were so bummed out. This is Lawrence, Kansas, in 1982. And we obviously were disappointed. And so we had a Japanese roommate that said that they met a roommate in the dorm that she said that she had met a Filipino. And it so happened to be June. And there were actually a few Filipinos, and we got introduced, and the rest is history. and I was hoping I would really come home. When I left the Philippines, my sister, who's also here, I told my parents I was coming home after 2 years just to take my master's in chemistry. But I believe there was one person that knew that I wasn't coming back, and that was my ex-boyfriend, who was crying hysterically at the airport because he knew that he would never see me, and that was the truth. We broke up, obviously. But my immigration story actually is a lesson for especially the young kids, the young women here in the audience, because I worked really hard to get to my place in my profession, being an Asian woman and being a minority. So it was a double whammy for me. And in the corporate world, as you all know, it's white, all white male. And I have been in so many meetings wherein I was not just the shortest, I was the darkest, and I was the only one with an accent. And I was giving a lot of presentations about our company's finances and so on, because I went from being a chemist to management. And obviously, I was very nervous, especially the first few years I was doing this, because they were all staring at me like, who is she? Why is she even in this room? And so I would just imagine everyone. This was a trick that a friend of mine told me. I would just overcome all my nervousness and all my stress by just imagining everyone in the room naked. That's what they told me to do. Is just think about, just imagine that that they're all naked. But I went through some, to be honest, racism. There was clearly favoritism in the three jobs that I had. People that had less experience get promoted very quickly, and I had to wait my turn. I had to work 10 times harder. I had to sacrifice a lot of my family time, and thanks to my loving, dedicated husband here, took care of the kids when I was working in these companies. But the lesson here is that we all can make it. We all can make it with hard work. We are smarter, we are tougher, and we can rise to the very top just like everyone. It doesn't matter what the color of your skin here is. It doesn't matter whether you have an accent. It doesn't matter where you're short like me. You have the opportunity right in front of you. You just have to grab it and go for it. If you fail, if you stumble, get up and then learn from it and move on. And that's the lesson in life. I have told a lot of my direct reports. I mentored a lot of folks that are now in really good places, whether in the academia or in the corporate environment. And this is the same lesson I tell them, because it hasn't been easy, both professionally and personally, because I had to make a lot of sacrifices. But at the end of the day, it's really my family, my relatives, my sister, and my friends, our friends who are here. The first person we met in Madison is here. It's Romy. That was in 1980. What year was that? 1992. 1995. 1995. Romy was working at Ginza. He was our cook. He was doing all the chop and and we were so fortunate. That was our second day here in Madison, and we met a Filipino, and it happened to be Romy. And Romy said, there is a picnic tomorrow, Filipino picnic, wherein you'll meet all the Filipinos, because that's a big event here. And that's when we met the Hamandres, Ernie, and Natalie, and a lot of other Filipinos that are up to this day our dearest friends, and we love them all to death. That's the reason why we had many chances to move elsewhere because of my job and so on, but we're still here, and we love this place. And once again, coming from the Philippines, I thought I was going to come back, and looking back, it's still my home. But this is my first home. The Philippines I consider my second home. And my parents actually came to the United States. My sister, my oldest sister came before me. My younger sister came after me. So this is our home now. This is where our kids grew up, and with all our friends around. Yeah, that's my story.
Thank you. I should have known that you would not be shy. Come forward.
Hi. Most of you know me. As you know about my immigration status from my sister, she said, you have to come here. So here I am. I was the last one in the family to come. My mom had to wait. She retired the day I graduated, so I won't get married, so they can haul me over here. So I got here. I had a boyfriend, and serious, but that was past. When I got here, I have to try the life here. So when I got here, there were some adjustments, and I made it. Thank God. I did my career. I'm a retired nurse from University of Wisconsin Hospital. And my last job was the training coordinator for the nurses that we recruited. Some of you are here. And the only thing I want to impart is that we learned how I taught the nurses to be self-sufficient. And I gave them the skills to be self-sufficient in everything. They left their families at home. I used to cry because I see them trying so hard, and they have their kids, their husbands still at home, but most of them came with their families. And I have to give them the support and give them the hope that everything will be okay. They had a 6-month probation, and they had to go through 5 exams before they can go to the embassy and get, their visas. Fortunately, we had a good lawyer. Their lawyer was Gorbachev's lawyer, so he accompanied them to the U.S. Embassy to make sure everything went smoothly. So they came in batches for 2 years. That was my job. And like I said, I taught them to be self-sufficient. They were with me for a month before we placed them in the units to make sure they fit right. And then that being said, I realized that I called the course between my boss and I, we called it American acculturation. I taught them from the language, the slang, words in the units, because you can't use English, book English, the patients don't understand them. So I have to, so that they can blend in, nicely and not be really isolated and be an eyesore that you are different, So they did very well. I'm proud to say that they are all successful. So I think I feel successful in what I did. I taught them how to go to the grocery, shopping, restaurant, how to clean. We placed them in apartments that were close to the hospital because it's an adjustment period. Like Dolly said, they didn't have any cars. Nobody knew how to drive, brought them to the banks and all that stuff. But like I said, the course that they went through with me, I think gave them a little, some skills to pursue their career in nursing and other stuff. And I'm proud to say their kids are in school, some of them med school, and they guided their kids properly, with all their hard work and effort. So I think my only take on this and to impart is that I think we should have a little group that will provide, something for the newcomers, just available. And I was at the airport. I think I was in Japan. I've met somebody. I said, "Where are you going?" I said, "Oh, I'm going to meet my husband in Michigan." And she said, "He's black." I said, "Well," I said, "He loves you, right?" She said, yes, he does. I said, "That's very good." But I said, and she said something very interesting to me. She said, "Mom, we had to go to some training because she was a mail order bride, and they had to have a 6-month training in the Philippines before they can be allowed to migrate, to prepare them, how to use the washing machine, how to write a checkbook, balance a checkbook, and stuff. So I think we can have a small group, and like your contribution, that's very important. I was in tears when I heard her story. I mean, we should, I think whenever I go, just yesterday, I was amazed. I still hear this comment. I was at East Side, no, Sun Prairie, and I met, unfortunately, she's like, Nine. Are you Pinay? I said, yes. I said, are you? She said, yes. Nai, which means mom. And anyway, I was just laughing to myself. I said, do you have friends? I said, you should attend the PAMANA. Oh, I attended twice, and I don't like it, but they're too, the usual comments, too social, too, she made a comment that she was like being looked down or something. I said, no. I said, you should, for the sake of your kids, we get together to share culture, practice, our culture, not to be, I told her, I said, we're all, like I told you guys, remember in your training, I said, we're all the same. Erase, you're a millionaire there. No, we're all the same here. We strive to survive and enjoy our lives. Nobody's higher than, yes, you can be a lawyer. That's good. That's very, something to be proud of. But I said you should, because you should have your kids learn about our culture. So that's my, I at first, in the olden days, you know me, I used to work and I didn't have time for this. Now I'm retired, I try to attend because I enjoy hearing different languages, dialects, it just brings me home. I mean, I'm so homesick, We're having a family reunion. 5 of my cousins are arriving this afternoon from the Philippines. So that's why my sister is here. So it just being with my friends speak Ilonggo. I speak Ilonggo. I speak Visayan. I speak Chabacano. I speak Tagalog. So when I hear this, it makes me feel like I'm home, So a little of your time gives me happiness. So thank you.